So I'm going to do the first couple of steps here for graph one, and then you'll just repeat this to conclude graph one, and then do graph two and three. So if you look, we're going to draw a 30-degree angle, and in Cami, if you go get your shape and you get a line, and you want to insert your line, we're always going to measure off of this x-axis. So you can see in blue there that I'm going until I get to 30. And as soon as I get to 30, I want to extend my angle out to the edge of the circle. And so sometimes it's a little finicky, but it looks like I have it there. So that's a 30-degree angle. Then it says, we want to find the point where this angle intersects my circle. So looking at this is a unit circle. And so this 10 really means 1. These are in tenths. So if I go over on my x-axis, so I'm going to go ahead and call this my x-axis, just so I make sure I remember that. I'm going to go up to this point that's marked up here, and it looks like on the x I went over 8, 9, but someplace between 8 and 9. So I'm going to put in, oh gosh, maybe, let's see, x would be 0. I don't know, 85, for lack of a better accuracy there. It's going to be close enough. And then on my y-axis, it looks like I went up 0.5. So notice my decimal in there. And that is my ordered pair that I'm going to use to represent this point. Okay, so that's what it's asking you to do. It says, remember, each line represents a tenth, and angles are measured from the positive x-axis. So now it says draw another 30-degree angle in quadrant 2. Create it as a reflection of your first across the y-axis. So I'm going to label my y-axis just so I don't forget. This is my y-axis, and it's asking me to take this blue line here and literally reflect it into quadrant 2. So I'm also going to label these quadrants. That's going to be really important. This is quadrant 1, and typically we use Roman numerals. This is quadrant 2 over here, so I'm going to go quadrant 2. Those quadrant names, they always go in that direction because of the direction the sun rises and sets. So it says reflect that over. So again, I'm going to go get my shape. I'm going to go get a line, and this time I'll just make it the same color. And Cami actually measures off the x-axis, but I can see that if I set it there, and I should extend it a little bit, it is the same as if I had reflected it. So this reflection comes over here, and I'm again going to mark the coordinates. So it looks like it is still over, because it's that reflection, still over 0.85. And again, that was my estimate, and it looks like it's still up 0.5. Now the difference is this x value went to my left. So I am going to have to put a negative on the x coordinate because it's to my left. So in quadrant 2, it looks like x's are negative and y's are positive. I'm going to add that here in my a little text up here. So I have negative x and positive y. And that's the coordinates or the point. We call them a point in the task, but that's just a coordinate or point. And over here, I'm going to do the same thing. But here I see that x is positive because I went to the right, and y is positive because I went up. So you're going to want to identify what happens in the next bottom two quadrants, 3 and 4. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit since I've got these two done. I see that the angle measure in quadrant 1 I was asked to put in there was 30 degrees. In quadrant 2, what is that angle measure? So how do I mark an angle? So I'm going to get my drawing tool, and I'm going to mark this angle here. I know was 30. So I'm going to go ahead and just text box it in there. If you want, you could also just write it in there with your mouse. It doesn't matter. And I'm going to go mark this angle. So I went all the way around here. Well, I know from the previous week that this line, half of a circle, was 180. So again, I'm going to text box that in there just to remind myself that was 180 degrees. And we're just staying in degrees. That new measurement of a radian is a little difficult without probably being in person. So we're just going to stay in degrees, but it has the same idea. And so if I back up here, I was at 180, but I didn't go 180. This 30-degree was the reflection off. So it looks like I went 150. So in quadrant 2, I went 150. If I reflect it down into quadrant 3, like it's going to ask me to do, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. It was more than what I wanted to do right now, but that's okay. I am reflecting it off and I'm going that 30 degrees, and it looks like it's about right in here, close enough. And that 30-degree reflected down would be, let's see, 180, and 30 more would be 210. So I better get my text box. I believe that this is 210. Then what it asks you to do, once you have them marked in there, questions: what do you notice about the coordinates? What do you notice about the x and the y's on each of these points? The next thing says, now you're going to find, using Desmos, the cosine of this value. So here's my Desmos. And the first thing you need to do is make sure your Desmos is in degrees and not that radian measure. So you're going to go to this wrench and you're going to make sure that it is in degrees. I believe it defaults to radian, so please check that or things aren't going to look as they should. So in here, I'm going to find the cosine, and we said the first angle was 30 degrees, and I get 0.866. So in my table, what I want to do is type in 8.866. So cosine 30 degrees, so make sure you get your text box, was 0.866. Earlier I got 0.85. Remember, that was kind of an estimate. I wonder if that's a pretty good estimate or not. Let's find the sine. So again, in Desmos, please make sure you are in degrees. It wants me to find the sine of 30 degrees. And that looks like 0.5. So 0.5. I'm wondering if these are having some relationship to what's going on here. So that's part of what I want you to do, is discover that. Also discover these angle measures that are related to one another, and it's going to ask you to do that for a 45 angle measure and a 60 angle measure. Be certain that you check the quadrant it lands in. So notice we said in quadrant 2 the x was negative. Okay, so if I had to and I found using Desmos the cosine of that next angle, which we said was 150, notice I got a negative on that angle measure. I wonder if there is a relationship that I can summarize, or some sort of pattern that's happening. And to test for one angle isn't enough. Okay, that's why you need to do it for 45 and 60.